Welcome to Session 8 of the UC Migration Webinar Series. I'm Rich Steves, Web Editor at TMC.
And I'm Alan Percy, Senior Director of Marketing at Audio Codes.
So we're coming into the final session here. How are we going to pull it all together?
Yes, exactly. Well, we're going to pull it together with some professional services. And one of the challenges a lot of businesses or partners have is the expertise to make all these things come together. As if you've been with us through the previous 7 sessions, you saw there's a lot of technology and there's a lot of architecture decisions that need to be made. And a lot of times partners are not necessarily 100% ready for that and they need a little help. So we're going to talk about professional services as it comes from Audio Codes and the capabilities and the process of going from soup to nuts in deploying Microsoft Lync with the guidance and help of the professional services group.
And who will be speaking on this important topic?
So joining us will be Bill Skinner. He's the Director of Professional Services for Audio Codes, and Bill's responsible for the professional services group and communicating the professional services capabilities for Audio Codes. In addition to that, too, we're also going to be joined again by Benjamin Tasato, from the Vice President of Professional Services from Conquest, who will be sharing how his organization has leveraged the professional services capabilities in a number of customer-specific applications.
Great. Sounds good. Let's hear what they have to say.
All right.
So, a couple thoughts on do-it-yourself. While we were putting the session together, was really sort of struggling with, how do we put together a metaphor that best matches people's personal experience with what they're facing with the UC environment. And I'm actually at home sort of struggling with some pool maintenance, so it sort of popped to mind, and maybe, actually the installation and maintenance of a pool is somewhat similar to the UC environment. And so we put together a couple slides here to sort of walk us through that, and you'll see how this actually matches here in a moment here. So, when making the decision to install a pool in your backyard, if a family gets excited about it, you have to make a couple choices. Certainly one thing you could do is you could do it yourself. You could do the whole thing soup to nuts. You could rent the equipment, the heavy equipment, to dig the hole. You could go through the trouble putting all the rebar and the plumbing and electrical in, and gunite and all the other materials needed to build a pool. But obviously, it's not something that everybody takes on. It really requires some very specialized tools, a ton of very specialized knowledge, and a lot of your personal time to complete it. And why would someone do this? Well, it's often the least expensive way to get a pool in the ground. It's kind of funny because I looked up on eHow and pulled up and said, how do you build a pool? And they said it was 4 easy steps. So I can trust me. I can assure you it's not 4 easy steps, but, for some people they have the skills and the tools, maybe that's the way to handle it. Another method, which is pretty much fairly popular, is, you outsource the entire effort. And this is, maybe we hire a professional pool contractor to do all the construction. You may even outsource all the seasonal startup and closing. You even maybe have a pool maintenance firm come in and do the weekly chemical testing, vacuum, and all the maintenance on the pool. And what's nice about this, of course, certainly, is you have no prior knowledge. You just basically jump in and swim, and you're on your way. Very few specialized tools. And unfortunately, as it turns out, it's not only expensive initially to have the pool installed, but also the ongoing maintenance quite costly. What's funny about this is really not how most people end up doing it. What they do is it's sort of a hybrid model, which is where you hire out the construction, you might even hire out the seasonal startup and closing, but most folks do their own weekly maintenance. They learn how to skim the pool, they learn how to do the vacuuming and test the chemicals, etc. And this is that balance point between fully outsourcing a project to handling it inside. And why do we make this kind of decision? This parallels very closely to what I see as the kind of decision you folks are facing with unified communications. You're making decisions about, do I spend capital up front expenditures, or are there operational expenses? What's the implication? Is it the operational expense is something I can handle, but the initial up front, what kind of time or how much time can we spend in the effort? And time is money, especially in UC, because the cost savings that come with UC aren't realized until you get your entire organization lit up on the UC platform. Control is an issue too. If by completely outsourcing the project, you don't necessarily have all the control that you wish you had over the project and over the infrastructure. And of course, the training costs. If maybe you didn't necessarily have all the skills to implement your UC platform, you might have to go out and either take the time or the expense to be trained on all those, when actually there might be somebody available that's not only fully trained, but also has done a number of these in the past and has the skills. And last but not least is, the specialized equipment, maybe some software and tools that you would need to do the initial implementation that wouldn't get reused or would infrequently be reused and would be quite costly. So these I see as being all the decision points that are part of that challenge in deploying it. And with that, I'm going to turn the call over to Bill, and Bill is going to share with you an introduction to professional services and the structure of the decision-making process that we see here from Audio Code. So Bill, why don't you take it from here?
Okay, thanks a lot, Alan. And I also wanted to thank everybody for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend the webinar. I hope that you also find it very informative. And as Alan suggested, if there's any sort of questions, feel free to post those, and then we will address those. I wanted to spend some time today to share with you my personal experiences with regarding the life cycle of any project, specifically the phases of the project, their importance, and the building blocks necessary that are needed for each of the phases. Finally, I want to discuss the criteria that needs to be considered when you determine the team or the group of people that will be assimilated to ensure a successful project. So I just... Okay. So at a high level, any project typically has three phases. They are the planning and design phase, implement, and manage. And all these phases are basically in a chronological order in nature. And I'll discuss each of those individually. But first, underlying the processes are several shared values that should be established early and encouraged throughout the project lifecycle. In one sense, the process defines what is necessary to be done, and the shared values shape the project personality that shape how things will be done. So encouraging the continuous evolution of these shared values recognizes the important contribution they make in helping the team to meet its overall objectives. Common shared values that support the process include, as in the first one, focus, which is really the primary point of optimization for all project activities and is the project goal. All the team members and all the project activities should be focused on supporting that one goal. This goal should be the basis for any decision-making and prioritization. The second one is more focused on the teamwork. The project team is most likely, like Alan said, a hybrid or a diverse group of managers, technicians, and any other professionals, probably from more than one company. The performance demands on the project are great, and the smooth operation of this team is essential to reach that goal. Subsequently, there's leadership, and there are two sides of the leadership coin, leading and following. Both are very necessary for the team to reach the goal. Team members must be prepared to understand and respond to situational changes, ready to assume each other's role as required at any given point in the project. One of the key ones, not just because it's unified communications, but it's key for any project, is in fact communication. Even in highly technical projects, the challenge of the technology is not nearly as great as the human challenge of building and maintaining effective communication paths. These paths must be built and maintained to ensure appropriate flows of communication within the team and between the team and the customers. The next one is on process. A single process must be understood and adhered to by all team members. There can be only one plan, and the plan must be followed. If the many different aspects of the complex projects are to be coordinated, this is essential. There is little room for individual improvisation, although a fundamental aspect of the process is the ability to adjust rapidly to changing circumstances. And finally, there's scalability. All of these shared values are expected to apply to all the project activities, but to be effective, all must scale to meet the need of each specific instance. There is not one right way to communicate. This or any of these values must be applied with a common sense, keeping the project goal and the team's shared values foremost. So subsequent to that, I kind of wanted to go through each of the three stages that I have listed here, and also provide you with the building blocks associated with those. So with that really is the planning and design. The planning phase of any project is the most important, and unfortunately is the phase most likely to be neglected. Many factors contribute to this, and they should not be underestimated by those who assume that the common sense of the old carpenter's axiom, measure twice and cut once, is enough to ensure thorough planning. Ironically, one of the most successful enemies of planning is the failure to plan itself. Insufficient time is given to planning because the project is getting a late start due to someone else's failure to properly plan the tasks. Planning takes time, but in the end, it also saves time. So here, the goals of the planning and design phase are very simple. Establish what the goals are going to be. Determine what the project funding is going to be associated with that. This is also when you're going to be forming that project team, which also could be made up of individuals from all different companies. In this phase, you're also going to be designing network architecture, setting the foundation for what it is you're actually going to deploy, and subsequently to determine the strategy for success. In the design phase of the project, the detailed set of components of the solution, including the hardware, the software, and any sort of associated professional services, will be established. This typically requires that the project team select from several alternative approaches, weighing the pros and cons of each to find the combination that best satisfies the requirements established in this phase. This is a good point to revisit the shared value of focus of the project goal. It also includes the preparation of strategic plan to migrate from the current environment to the new one. This phase also includes the agreement on the way the new infrastructure will be tested following the implementation to help to ensure the desired benefits will be obtained. And in here, I wanted to share with you some of the building blocks in order that are necessary as a part of this planning and design. So like I mentioned, from the network design, is it going to be necessary to do a proof of concept before we start going out into the network? What is the project planning? That this is key to understand from the beginning through the end. What is the acceptance criteria that's needed to be met in order to ensure the success of the project? The operations and administration and maintenance of the planning. What can we look at from a management perspective? The migration, is this a new greenfield opportunity, or are we taking an existing environment and migrating it to this new environment? Are there already existing methods that need to be developed or enhanced in order to ensure the success? And specifically with unified communications, is there a network assessment of an existing data network that we need to do an evaluation and determine whether or not the existing infrastructure can now support voice? So then going into the next phase, which is the implementation phase, these are the key identified items that need to be thought of in this phase. By the time this project begins and doing in the implementation phase, the major threats that contribute to the downfall of most projects have been eliminated through the effective use of planning and design. The project has gotten off to a good start with well-defined objectives. Management support and a healthy project team has been established. The technical designs have been prepared and subjected to careful review, as have the techniques to be followed during the rollout and a test that will prove that everything works as promised. This isn't to say that there are no risks facing the project at this point. Entering the implementation phase, the project is well at a good start to go. For the first time, the quality of the work done by the project team will be under scrutiny of the most important audience of all, the customer's customer. The careful planning, the investment in building a strong team, and dependable lines of communication will all be used to ensure the success of the rollout. During this phase, obviously, the new infrastructure will be rolled out. It will be supported by the development of a detailed project plan and possibly by the development of any specialized techniques or tools to be used to streamline deployment. It's also a time to revisit the project's foundation, examining the shared values, and updating the risk management plan. During this phase also, at the times when we're actually doing what's considered in the unified communications environment, the day one activities. We're actually procuring and delivering the components that are needed from a software, hardware, and any sort of professional services. During this phase, we're going to be installing, configuring, and testing the equipment that's going to be used in the network. We're going to be continuing through effective project management, monitoring the progress of activities and make sure that things are on schedule. And all of these things we're going to do in order to ensure a successful deployment. Okay. The building blocks associated with that are down here below. Things that need to be considered, that need to be done during this implementation phase are site surveys. As I mentioned, if this is a migration activity, we need to go out and see what actually is installed already at the customer location. Do we need to go out and see what the existing PBX is from a unified communications situation? What do we need to do about physical installation, physically racking and stacking the equipment? That needs to be considered. How are we going to implement, configure? Do we need to consider staging in advance of actually the equipment arriving on site? These are things that need to be considered during and are done during the implementation phase. As I mentioned, the monitoring of the progress is done with successful project management. Network integration, once we get all the components in place, what sort of acceptance testing or software quality assurance tests need to be performed in order to do that? Is there any sort of training that needs to be provided in advance of the manage phase, which is the last part of the cycle? Do we need to educate people on how to configure, how to test, how to support the new infrastructure? And what is the overall hardware procurement process, whether you're looking at a global unified communications deployment within a specific region, nationally, or globally? These are all things that are done during this phase of the implementation. And then the last phase is the support and manage phase. And this is after the new infrastructure is installed and it's ready to be used. The project team is ready to disband and get back to their day jobs. The project is nearly complete, but in one sense, this is just about to start. The manage phase of the project contains all the activities needed to transition to the operations and maintenance of the new infrastructure for the rest of the useful life. These activities include the important transition from the project team to the new owners, who will guide future refinement and enhancement in support of changing business needs and technical capability. So things to consider in this is, now that we have a fully supported and operational system, we're going to continue to monitor that equipment to ensure success, make sure that everything remains active online. We want to also consider and plan in advance during this phase of the project any sort of network changes or system growth. This would also be considered things like moves, adds, and changes that need to be done throughout the life of the project. And also, we want to optimize for continuous improvement. Are there things, software upgrades, configuration changes, performance enhancements that could actually be done as a part of it? Management is not necessarily just reacting to problems, but proactively looking at issues and correcting them before they actually become a reactive situation. The building blocks within this within this phase are really software maintenance. How are we going to get technical support on these issues? What is the help desk that will be used from a customer perspective of calling in and requesting support? Do we need to consider software upgrade strategies, going forward? What are the spares management that we need to do for each of the locations? Do we need to also include a dispatch of an on-site technician if that's needed? I mentioned earlier, for network changes and systems growth, the moves, adds, changes, and deletes. If we're looking at unified communications, we're looking at phones, PCs, laptops, gateways, SBAs, from a link experience with SBAs, all things, we need to take into consideration and plan for, that the network will evolve and will change, and we need to be able to do that. And then also any sort of, like I mentioned, any sort of performance enhancements or upgrades that need to be done throughout the network to ensure the overall success and continued success. So those are the three phases of a project and the building blocks associated with each one of those phases. And then the last decision, as we're not only building a pool but building a house, is we need to actually consider who's the right person for each of the jobs. I mean, you have the customer, which would be anybody, and you have a partner, and you have a vendor, or we have different areas of areas where we can actually gather resources. So going back to what Alan said at the beginning of the webinar, implementing a unified communication solution is like I said, it's installing the pool or installing a house. You can do it yourself, or there are professionals that can do everything for you, or you can do a combination of both, like the hybrid approach. Special considerations need to be taken when making this decision. There are multiple paths in order to obtain success. At the end of the day, the same set of tasks that I just described need to be accomplished throughout the project lifecycle. It's just deciding who's going to do what. So all these building blocks here in this section are things that need to be considered. Is this more of a capital expense that we want to do, or do you want to consider it as an operational expense? Is this something that's a one-time event that maybe you're just going to do it once and never have to do it again? So maybe it's a question that you don't want to invest in that one-time event. Would you rather go with somebody that has best practices, lessons learned, who have a vast amount of experience in doing it? Do you as yourself want to retain control and have the control to be able to be a part of that team to make those decisions? What does your timeline look like? Do you have time to be able to, if you decide if you have an enormous amount of time and you want to build that infrastructure yourself, then you can choose that path. Or if you would rather go with somebody, if you have a shortened timeline and they already have an existing infrastructure or process and procedures and professionals that can be able to do that, then you can go that path. And subsequent to that is also the training. So with any project, it's necessary for you to spend time, interviewing potential suppliers for professional services, discussing and learning their capabilities and experiences, and in order to ensure your project's success. And then lastly, I did want to provide to you some audio codes and link resources that I know of that we have available for you. There is a very good one. There is a Forrester Total Economic Impact, which actually gives you a ROI case study on going with Microsoft Link as your unified communication solution. Audio codes, we have a very close relationship with Microsoft. We have several case studies that are posted on our website. We have several different recorded webinars that are also available. There is also another webinar that we did discussing all of the professional services capabilities that audio codes can bring from a unified communications perspective, as well as there's a link here for the audio codes professional services that we have published on our website. And then when you actually get copies of this presentation, you'll just be able to right-click and open up the hyperlink and go directly to those locations. So with that, Alan, I'll give it back to you.
Great, thanks. Appreciate that. So just a little clarification. The follow-up email will have all these links in it, so that you'll be able to access these materials, and we'll have more on that in just a few moments. So I appreciate the content, Bill. It was a sort of very deep educational look at the process for developing a professional services offering, which is pretty valuable for many of our partners on the line. So next, I want to turn the call over to Ben Tasato. Ben, why don't you take it from here and share with us some your experience delivering professional services to the market?
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate that presentation as well, Bill. So what we're going to be talking about today is the services that Conquest can provide around a unified communications project. And Bill's presentation was a really nice kind of segue into what I'm going to be talking about, because we're going to be kind of discussing how we can help in each one of the areas that Bill mentioned. So things like planning a deployment properly, things like developing an architecture, things like deployment and migration, ongoing support. We're going to be talking about our services and how we can potentially augment a customer's team and being able to go through all of those different parts of the process of getting a solution like this rolled out. And then at the very end of the presentation, we're going to be talking about a couple of customer scenarios where we were able to come in and either deploy and support a solution end-to-end for our customer, or just come in and provide kind of one little bit of specialized assistance for them where they kind of deployed and supported the rest of the solution themselves, and then an example that's kind of in between. And that's something that I wanted to mention kind of before I get into any of the details here is, we find that depending on a customer's culture, depending on the workload that their people have, the skill sets that their people have, the assistance that they need when they're rolling out a unified communication solution, they widely vary, right? Some customers come to us and say, well, guys, we really need a partner that's going to come in here and do this turnkey, right? So let us know what you need from us ahead of time. We're going to get it ready, and then we're going to need you to run with this thing. Come to us at these milestones. We're going to review stuff together. At the end, we're going to have a working solution, and then you guys are going to support it ongoing, right? That's one extreme. Then at the far other extreme, we've got customers that say, well, we've got this pretty much handled end-to-end ourselves. There's just this one little bit that we've got questions about or that we're hung up on, and we need some really deep expertise around, telephony integration or certificates or Microsoft software. Come in and help with this little piece to kind of get us over the hump. That's the far other extreme. And then we've got everything that's kind of in the middle. So a little bit about Conquest before we go ahead and get into some of the specifics around our services for unified communications. We're a 10-year Microsoft Gold partner. We like to say we focus on unified communications on-prem and in the cloud. So we work with Microsoft's Office 365 cloud products, Exchange, SharePoint, and Lync. We also work with Microsoft Lync and Microsoft Exchange on-premise, so planning, deployment, migration support around both of those products, specifically with Lync around telephony, integrating Lync with other telephony solutions, replacing other telephony solutions with Lync. You're going to get to see some great examples where we've had successes doing those things with customers in a couple of minutes. We have messaging and hosting competencies with Microsoft, so those are the kind of Microsoft badges that we have. We were awarded Microsoft's Voice Partner of the Year award last year for the PBX replacement work we did with a lot of their customers, so we're able to go in and demonstrate the value of replacing a PBX with Lync, plan, deploy, and ultimately support a successful unified communications deployment based on Lync telephony. So we got an award for that. We've got successful deployments across a variety of verticals and customer sizes, so anything from government to healthcare to commercial organizations, and anything from a hosted telephony solution for a small lawyers or doctor's office all the way up to multi-tens of thousands of seat enterprise environments looking at replacing complex telephone infrastructures with Lync. And two of the programs that we like to talk about also that we've gotten to participate in are the Microsoft Experience Center program. So we've got the capability to come into your office and demo this stuff for you firsthand in an immersive fashion where you get to actually pick up the phones and call other people that are participating in the demonstration. So great way to kind of understand the value of how easy it is to communicate with your colleagues with the unified communication solution in the MEC. And we were also one of the first partners that was certified by Microsoft to support Lync and be backed by their premier support program. So we're really proud of that, and we've got a solution called Conquest Care for UC that we'll talk about in a few minutes that leverages that capability. So this slide just talks about kind of the different categories of services that we can provide around a UC deployment. So first is understanding the value of unified communications. I think that customers struggle with this sometimes, right? So you go to a demo or you have a vendor like Microsoft or maybe another vendor that's in the UC space kind of pitch their solution to you and you see what it looks like and you say, well, I think that might be valuable. I think that might, help my people communicate better, help them find the right folks a little bit faster, help them get answers to customers a little bit quicker, or maybe complete projects faster, complete a sales cycle faster. I can see where there might be value in rolling this type of solution out, but how do I really quantify that, right? As a lot of decision makers that we work with look at this stuff and then need to go to other decision makers or other factions within an organization and really justify this stuff, right? Really say, well, not only does this look great and look like it can add a lot of value, here are the dollars and cents around how this is going to drive the top line of our business, how it's going to increase efficiency and give us some really strong soft savings, or how we're going to really, reduce existing operating costs with this stuff. So we provide a service around coming in and working with a customer to help them understand that. And I think that that's kind of an important first step that even comes before planning a deployment, because before you start planning anything, you need to make sure it makes sense for your organization, right? So we can help with that. Planning and architecture is huge. I can re-stress it. I know that Bill stressed it a lot. Making sure that you've got the right solution architecture in place, and making sure that the right deployment plans in place to get it rolled out is very, very important. We can help with both of those things and have services around planning and architecture. Deployment and migration. This is where you're really starting to execute on that plan that you had put together, and getting into, actually getting the software deployed, getting the servers deployed, getting the integration tools deployed, the audio codes, gateways, right, the headsets and handsets on the desktops, really, getting the stuff out there. We can help with that as well. Adoption and readiness. So this is a place where we've seen some customers get tripped up. You understand the value of UC, right? You've put together a great business case and you've gotten the project approved. You plan and you plan and architect everything, to a T. You get everything deployed correctly, integrated with your existing systems, maybe move off of another platform, and you don't really spend the time you need to getting users trained effectively. You can really run into a problem with people not adopting the solution, not wanting to use it, right? And that's the ultimate success that you need to reach when you're rolling one of these solutions out. You need to have people coming up and saying, wow, this is great. This is really saving me a lot of time, right? It's really easier for me to reach my customers like this. This team that stretches, the Atlantic Ocean that I'm managing, they're really communicating more effectively. You want people to find the solution easy to use, so that they start using it, they keep using it. So making sure that the right training and adoption strategy is in place is very important, and we stress that to our customers. And we find that kind of the right strategy varies from organization to organization. And I'll give you some examples in a few minutes when we talk about that a little bit more. And then ongoing support is huge, right? So now you've got everything rolled out, you've got everybody trained, everybody's using the solution. Last thing you want on earth is to have any downtime associated with it, right? So making sure that you're monitoring the solution, making sure that you're updating it, that you're preventatively maintaining it, looking at checklists and making sure that everything's working within normal parameters, making sure that you've got the adequate maintenance on all of the different components that are in the solution with all the necessary vendors. So we offer a service that kind of helps with all of that as well. So UC value assessment, so that first kind of topic area, helping customers understand the value. Like I was saying, this helps quantify the benefits of a UC solution. And the way we kind of go about it is we come in and we, first talk to the customer about some goals. We examine the communication spends and work roles within an organization. So we say, well, how are your people communicating today, right? Is there any dissonance in that process? Are there any areas where you're finding people are having a hard time communicating with one another, hard time finding the people they need to communicate with in the organization? And then, what's your spend on all of your existing communications tools? How much are you spending on PBX maintenance? How much are you spending on video conferencing tools? How much are you spending on travel, which is a tool that some companies use as a communication, right? Flying people out to see other people. And then we put together a study, right, that takes that information and juxtaposes it against the cost to build out a unified communication solution built on Microsoft technologies. And we come up with some ROI numbers, right, and an overall kind of payback time for the solution. As an example, working with a healthcare customer that's actually located in Birmingham, Alabama, we got engaged with the Microsoft account team to do one of these UC value assessments. And we found that caseworkers and admissions peoples in these small clinics that the customer is running were having trouble communicating with one another. And this was like the main source of revenue for these guys. So we figured out that a 2% increase in efficiency in the communication of those two people based on their revenue numbers and what the production was at that time would pay for the solution we were looking at. So that's an example of kind of being able to drive the top line with a solution like this. Other examples are we'll come in to some organizations and we'll find that they've got tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a month worth of conferencing spend, right? Spend on audio, video, web conferencing tools as a service, and we can come and put a solution in that'll have feature parity, right? Do the same thing as all of those tools. It'll do it. The solution will do it in one easy-to-use interface and in one easy-to-manage kind of back-end system for the IT folks, and we can eliminate all of that recurring cost, right? So that's an example of how, from a bottom-line perspective, we take an assessment like this and we help customers understand the overall economic impact of a unified communication solution. So planning and architecture, right? This is also very, very important. So once the customer's, taking a look at the ROI materials and they say, wow, we definitely want to do this. Next step is we need to get in and we need to put an architecture, a detailed architecture and plan together for what the solution is going to look like and how we're going to roll it out, right? So first thing is, discussing the goals for the solution. So making sure that everybody understands where we're trying to get at the end of this deployment. A lot of times that's based on some of the ROI analysis we were doing. Hey, the goals are we need to replace these telephone systems, we need to replace these conferencing tools, and just making sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of where we're going to be at the end of everything. Examining an existing environment. So after we know where we're going, we got to see where we're at, right? So what types of telephony solutions do we have in place? What's the existing network look like? What is it? We do everything based on Microsoft software. What does the existing Microsoft directory services and messaging environment look like? So we can really understand where everything's at, right? And then after we know where we're going and we know where we're at, we sit down with technical teams and we say, okay, this is what we think makes sense in terms of an architecture. Let's go ahead and start building out a plan to get there. And depending on the size of the environment and the complexity of the environment, I mean, these 4 bullets could be as easy as a few days worth of work or as in-depth as months of work, right? And we've been in both of those scenarios. So this kind of oversimplifies things a little bit, but I wanted to give you guys like a quick snapshot of how we kind of walk through this stuff. And then last but not least, we document everything and present it and make sure that everybody's on the same page before we move into deployment. So adoption and readiness. Did I skip one? I think I did. Oh, maybe the slides are out of order. Nope. Well, there was supposed to be a slide in there about deployment and migration, but it's not in there. Essentially, and I'll just kind of talk you guys through it since the slide's not in there. After we go through the planning and architecture exercises, we can help with deployment, and deployment is everything from come in and help us with this specific piece of our of deployment of our infrastructure with these specific parts of the solution to, hey, we want a turnkey deployment where you're going to come in, you're going to roll out all the servers, you're going to roll out all the gateways, you're going to connect it to the PBXs, you're going to migrate all the users over, you're going to put all the phones on the desks, you're going to decommission the old stuff, you're going to provide post support, you're going to do the training, you're going to do the whole thing, right? So, planning, deployment, and migration can be anything from very, very basic to very, very involved, again, depending on the complexity of the environment and the customer's needs and skill sets, right? Typically, when we work with larger customers, they're in a position where they've got a team that's supporting similar technologies to this in the existing environment. So usually there'll be a network and telecom team where there are really talented telecommunications people. There'll be an infrastructure team that has folks that are familiar with Microsoft technologies and servers and DNS and certificates and a lot of the other kind of software-based skills that you need to be able to roll these things out. So in those environments, it's just about coming in and augmenting them where they need really specialized expertise and experience around the solution they're rolling out. And then in other environments, customers need that kind of expertise and management skill to take the whole thing end to end. So adoption and readiness, right? Adoption and readiness is, as I was saying, another really important area. This can be a big hang-up for customers. So you want to make sure that you understand your users. This has been a problem that we've seen over and over. When you're rolling a solution like this out, a UC solution, specifically when you're replacing people's telephones, we find that it's a tremendous tool. It can add a lot of value, but only if you really understand how users have used the telephone in the past and translate that into a meaningful experience for them with the UC solution, and then get them the appropriate training in a timely fashion before you do the rollout, right? So I'll give you an example. We're working on a rollout in a hospital in Cynthiana, Kentucky. They've got a small little admission center there with 5 folks that work on it, and they're on the phone constantly all day. So typically for folks that are on the phone all day, we'll suggest headsets. So we suggested a couple of headset models. They piloted them out, and none of them liked having anything on their head, right? I mean, as silly as that sounds, they didn't like having things on their head. So we ended up moving them over to a USB-based phone that was a little bit more comfortable for them. So this is something that people are going to have to be interacting with all day long, right? So if they're not comfortable with it, it could end up being a problem with getting them to adopt it. So you want to make sure you understand what your users' needs are and what they're comfortable with. Help them select the right endpoints. So when you're talking about, again, a voice solution, if voice is part of the overall UC solution, you want to make sure you select the right device for them to use to speak to other people. Developing training materials that fit for the organization. So this is something that can also really vary widely, organization to organization. We've done rollouts in one of the examples I'm going to show you in a few minutes, where we came in and the customer decided, okay, we're going to do a 30-minute training, and in that 30-minute training, they were replacing their PBX with Link. We're going to teach these people how to do all the basic things they do with their phones today with Link, and that's it. They're not going to be able to absorb anything else. We're going to do 30 minutes worth of that, and then we're going to do an ongoing education kind of strategy, right? And we help them, create a portal where people could go in and find additional information, and we help them with some quick cards that people could use to reference back in the future, so they could continue to kind of use the solution and learn how to use some of the additional features. We've got everything from that all the way to super white glove, user by user kind of transition where one person goes and sits with one person that's actually moving from a PBX phone to Link, and they go ahead and as we're transitioning them, they walk them through one-on-one an hour's worth of basically training, sitting there in front of the computer with the person. So strategy can be really different on this stuff depending on the culture in the organization. And again, I think it's important to understand how your people best absorb training on stuff, and then we can kind of help you tailor it from there. We can also help with delivery of the training. We do that all the time. And then ongoing training strategies and aids, like I was talking about earlier, from portal-based solutions where we can set a web page that's got a bunch of content on it for people to go consume, to quick sheets and things like that. We can help with that also. And then last but not least, ongoing support. So ongoing support is really, really important. Again, once you've successfully deployed a solution, you don't want to have any downtime, right? You don't want to have a situation where downtime, causes you to have issues with your user base. In addition to not wanting to have any downtime, you usually want to have one throat to choke for support, right? A lot of our customers have told us that, a Microsoft UC solution, and really any UC solution, is usually going to be, an amalgamation of different technologies. So we work on Microsoft stuff exclusively at Conquest, right? So we'll typically have, Microsoft software, Link, and Exchange at the core of a solution, right? That software will be sitting on either virtual servers or hardware servers that are, the virtualization software or the servers that it's sitting on will be, written or manufactured by another vendor. We partner with audio codes to interface with the telephone network. So, there are going to be some audio codes gateways in the solution every time, right? telephones or headsets, there's going to be some Polycom, some Plantronics, maybe some Jabra stuff that gets deployed there as well. There might be contact center software from, Prairie Fire, Aspect, or Clarity Connect, or one of our contact center partners. So you're going to have a variety of different kind of components in the solution. Most customers don't want to be in the situation where if they have a problem, they've got to troubleshoot which part of that solution, which part of that solution is an issue, and then kind of reach out to that vendor and deal with them directly, and then potentially have to work with all the other vendors that that part of the solution is touching to get something resolved, right? So we offer a service called Conquest Care for UC that basically gives a customer one throat to choke, or hopefully one back to pat, right? So one support contact, 24/7, 365. If you have an issue with the UC solution, we can basically come in, provide root cause analysis for it, and then work the issue to resolution with all of the vendors that have contributed parts of the solution. A lot of times we don't even get phone calls because we are monitoring the solution. If something's wrong, we're going to know ahead of time. So all of the Windows servers, the gateways, all of the different kind of components that are part of the solution, we're monitoring them on a 24/7 basis, and then remediating issues that come up. We're preventatively maintaining them and patching them, and then we provide a liaison, a technical liaison for the customer. So you've got that kind of personalized service coordination, regular meetings to talk about, issues that have come up with the solution and the use of the service, and the whole thing's backed by Microsoft Premier. So this is an example of how we can kind of help with that ongoing support of the solution. So these are a few examples of customer scenarios where we've provided different levels of implementation and support service. So the first one is a university that we're working with in South Florida. These guys were on a North-South phone switch, and we got engaged with them about a few months ago, and they came to us and said, listen, we want to replace this switch with a telephony solution. We showed them Link, they loved it, so we kind of helped them scope the solution out. We didn't do the full BVA for them. They actually already had some information on costing, on what they were paying for their existing solution. So we helped them put together the cost for the new solution. They put that against what they were paying for maintenance and support of what was in place. They figured that it made sense, and we went ahead and moved into deployment. We're kind of mid-deployment with them right now. We've got Link integrated with their existing PBX. Their users are already using Link for IM and presence, and we're moving users over from the PBX to Link for telephony. After we're done with the implementation engagement, we're going to be providing all of their ongoing support as well. So second example was a customer that we've got in Broward County. Broward County, Florida. They manufacture surgical robots that do selective, like, knee surgery. So instead of getting a full knee replacement, you just get part of your knee replaced. Really neat stuff. So with these guys, we did an end-to-end deployment with them. We helped them with everything from deploying the back-end parts of the solution to rolling the phones out on the desktop. But they decided they wanted to do support themselves, so they've been supporting the solution on an ongoing basis. And then Jarden is one of our favorite customers, and they're a much larger shop. They've got a large telephony group that works there, a large servers and infrastructure group, and they've asked us to come in and help them with specific projects. We haven't rolled out any phones. We helped them develop their end user training, but they delivered it themselves. We didn't build all of their back-end Microsoft UC infrastructure. We built some of the Link stuff. They built all the Exchange pieces. So, and we've also provided kind of ongoing procurement support and guidance. So they'll call and ask for advice, and we're continuing to sell them gateways from audio codes and things like that. So we're engaged with them, but it's not as full-time of an engagement or as turnkey of an engagement. So just an example of how, again, the customer kind of looked at our suite of services and said, these are the things that make sense for us, and these are the things that don't.
Well, that was some very interesting information on that topic.
Absolutely.
So we started this with 8 different topics regarding UC migration. What do you think we've learned through all of these sessions?
Well, probably, obviously, we've covered a lot of ground in the last 8 sessions, that's for sure. And what we're hoping is that what the listeners have gotten out of this is that they've seen that there is a migration process by following some of the instruction and the tips that we learned from the Microsoft presenters and our partners, that there is a process to move businesses from their legacy PBX or TDM environment over to a full UC environment without a lot of surprises. You know, they should be able to, by following these steps and leveraging the professional services group, be able to make a very successful migration over to UC.
There's a lot of great information in this series, but if you want to learn more about this topic, please check out all the resources available on the Link Migration channel. Thank you very much, Alan.